The next type of reaction is a single replacement reaction. So this is where the atoms of one element replace the atoms of another element. And you're going to be able to tell it's a single replacement because if you look at the reactants, we have one element and one compound. So what's happening here is this element is trying to replace the corresponding element here. So in this case, if A is a metal, it's going to replace the metal in Bx to get Ax plus B. So B ends up by itself. A is now combined with the X. You could also have A replace X if A is a nonmetal. So you just have to pay attention, is A metal or nonmetal, and that will tell you what it is trying to replace in the compound. So you basically have three types. You could have a metal replacing hydrogen, a metal replacing another metal, or a nonmetal replacing a nonmetal. So here, this first example is a little hard to see, so I'm just going to rewrite it. 2Li plus 2HOH, which is sometimes how we write H2O. So in this example, the Li is replacing this first H, okay? That's why the H ends up by itself on the product side, and then the lithium combines with the hydroxide. So that's one option. So in the case of a single replacement reaction, hydrogen acts like a metal, okay? It acts like a group 1 metal in this case, okay? Not always, but in the case of a single replacement, hydrogen will replace a metal, or metal can replace hydrogen. You could also have metal replacing another metal. So here the potassium exchange places with the zinc. Zinc ends up by itself. Potassium now combines with chlorine. You could also have a nonmetal replacing a nonmetal. So fluorine in this case is going to knock out bromine because fluorine's a nonmetal. It can't knock out sodium. It has to knock out bromine. Bromine ends up by itself. Fluorine then bonds with the sodium. So what's important in a single replacement reaction is you need to follow what's called an activity series. So the activity series you should always have on hand. You don't need to memorize it. So this will determine if a reaction occurs. So the most active elements are at the top and the least active elements are on the bottom. And notice it's split into metals on one side and then halogens or nonmetals on the other side. So only a more active element can replace a less active element. So in terms of this, lithium can replace any other metal on the list. Gold cannot replace anybody. It is the least active. So the way you should think about it is the element that's by itself. So in terms of if I'm looking at the single replacement reaction, element by itself needs to be higher than the element in the compound. So we're going to look at a couple examples in a second. So we're going to predict the products here. So chlorine plus HF. So again, look at the element that's by itself. Chlorine is a non-metal. It is going to try to replace fluorine. Remember, hydrogen's not a non-metal in this case. You can also tell because look at the list that chlorine's in. Hydrogen isn't in that list, so it can't try to replace it. All right, chlorine is going to try to knock out fluorine. It cannot because it's lower than fluorine on the list. Chlorine is less active than fluorine. It cannot replace it. Therefore, we just write NR. No reaction. And that's it. There's no products. This reaction does not happen. So a single replacement reaction does not have to happen, okay? You can have what's called a no reaction. That's fine. All right, let's look at iron plus copper 2 sulfate. Iron is a metal. It's going to try to replace copper. So go to your list. Iron is here. Where is copper? Down here. Okay. So iron's going to try to replace copper. It can because it's higher on the list. Okay. So copper ends up by itself. Plus, now I'm just going to assume iron has a +2 charge here. I would have to somehow tell you what the charge is. And this is balanced. So that would be our signal replacement for this example. So try the next two on your own and then check your answer. All right, so here we have bromine plus magnesium chloride. Bromine's the nonmetal. It's going to try to replace chlorine. Bromine's here. Chlorine's here. So bromine is going to try to knock out chlorine. It cannot because it's lower on the list, so no reaction. And last one, magnesium plus aluminum chloride. So magnesium is going to try to replace aluminum. Those are the metals. So let's find magnesium and aluminum. So magnesium is going to try to replace aluminum. It can because it's higher on the list. Okay. So aluminum is by itself plus MgCl2. Magnesium has a 2+ charge. Chlorine has a 1-. I crossed them down. MgCl2. This is not balanced. So we're going to have a 3, 2, 2, and a 3. So that is it for single replacement reactions. So for these types of reactions, the element by itself is going to dictate what happens. So element by itself, if it is higher on the list than the other element, the reaction will occur. If the element by itself is lower on the list on the activity series, the reaction will not occur and you would just write no reaction.